Tired of cycling coverage cluttered with ads and clickbait? Want in-depth analysis, honest reviews, and a community of like-minded riders? Escape Collective is different. We're member-funded, so you are our priority. Get exclusive bonus episodes, insider newsletters, and connect directly with top cycling journalists. I promise I didn't write that last bit. I am just reading the script out. Join us at escapecollective.com/join.
Welcome back to the Placeholder Podcast, everybody. Caley Fretz, fantastic show for you. The Giro. We just had another Giro today, another Giro stage. We had Tadej Pogačar just now winning by over 7 minutes. Over 7 minutes. Despite the shortened stage, which apparently he didn't even want to win, but basically purely by accident, ended up crossing the line first. Couldn't even help himself. And then swapped jerseys with the young man in second. So that was fun. Joining me on today's episode, Jonny Long from underneath the safety jogger.
Umbrella.
Yes. Well, I was going to use your, whatever you guys term you guys use for an umbrella. A brolly, but I felt it just didn't feel natural.
That's all right. Yeah, hello. I'm method podcasting the Giro today. It's like I might as well be in Lavinia because my internet's now packed up completely. So as long as this podcast doesn't last more than 90 minutes when there are thundery showers forecasted, we're going to be all right.
We'll try to keep it below that. And Kit Nicholson, welcome back.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm all right.
Excellent. Let's talk about the Giro. Let's talk about Jonas Vingegaard's tattoo.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my goodness. We have some heavier stuff to talk about, too. The Lizzie Banks announcement of her positive test, which she put up a very long post on, was it Tuesday? We don't have Dane here, but we might have to head back into Dane's doping dungeon without him because we have not the Lizzie Banks thing, to be clear. We have a motor doping suspect in a French amateur race, so that's always fun. Always. And then we're going to pull Ronan in here because we're going to talk a little bit of tech. We're going to do a bit of a mailbag and talk about some marginal gains and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So let's get into it. So we're halfway through the last week of this Giro d'Italia. The big chat is how easy can Pogačar go at the moment and still win this thing? The answer is very easy. He as of recording, so by the time you listen to this, maybe even more. As of recording, he is leading this Giro d'Italia by 7 minutes and 18 seconds over Danny Martinez and Geraint Thomas, who lost a bit of time on Tuesday's stage.
And it's more than 10 minutes between him and fifth place now, which is wild. I don't know, actually, it just seems wild because it's just an interminable stretch of his advantage. I also, on your point of how easy can he go for this last week, at this time of year, would he usually be with the Tour de France would he usually be at an altitude camp where he'd be working rather harder, do we think? This week in comparison, obviously he's got the stress of bike racing, but yeah, apart from after today, he's got to warm up. He was the only rider in short sleeves, which was mental. But then the next hard stage isn't until Saturday, I don't think.
I think it's safe to say he's not going to exit this Giro particularly fatigued.
No, which is...
Right? Now, that isn't to say that this is... Oh, yeah. Well, that isn't to say that this is the perfect setup for a Tour de France, right? It probably isn't. And, you wouldn't necessarily run a big 3-week block like this. And, you can't do your intervals when although maybe he could. Maybe he could just go out and do intervals and just see what else happens at the bike race. You can't go do your intervals when you're in a race, right? Training has come a long way from the kind of racing yourself into shape era. And that doesn't happen much anymore for a reason. But I think it's pretty safe to say that he's going to come out of this in decent form and not super fatigued and certainly ahead of where Jonas Vingegaard is currently after spending quite a lot of time in a hospital and only recently getting back on a bike outside. So yeah, then the discussion inevitably turns to the double and things like that. But we'll leave those chats for June, maybe.
Yeah.
Double, triple.
Yeah. Before we even talk about that, I want to introduce a controversial question. We saw Tadej Pogačar's celebration as he crossed the line to win stage 16, where he counted on his fingers the number of stages he'd won. Luckily, he's got 5 fingers, so it worked perfectly.
He didn't have to take both hands off the bar. He did actually.
Well, maybe he will if he does it again.
Maybe he'll have to.
But
yeah.
is this? Did it feel cocky, or is it his right for being so dominant? Does he still pass the cheeky chappy test that it's not taken the wrong way? What are we feeling?
I think he definitely brought back he brought back at least some of the raised eyebrows that he might have experienced on that after crossing the finish line when Pellizzari went straight up to his warm down station, and Pogačar very quickly handed over his nice pink sunglasses and his pink jersey to the young chap who he'd beaten to the line.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, my first thought was, oh, that's an interesting one from Pogačar, because he was barely smiling when he did the countdown, quite slow countdown, and he was looking at his fingers as he did it. He was like, look at this, look at what I've done. And and then, but yeah,
maybe I'm just fully pog-pilled here. I don't know. Like, but I didn't mind it at all. And I think that one of the reasons I didn't mind it was what Pellizzari came and did right afterward, right? So the jersey swap thing is not something that has existed in cycling particularly frequently, right? In other sports, it's very common. In football, it's very common. Everybody wants Lionel Messi's, jersey after any sort of match. I kind of like it coming to cycling. Like, I kind of like it, and I think the reason I like it, and the reason why it informs my view of Pogačar, is it's just a sign of respect from his fellow riders, right? That doesn't necessarily exist with all great champions, right? Like, if you go back to, and I loathe to even bring this up, but I'm going to do so anyway. You know how when Lance Armstrong was kind of taken down, right? Like, everybody just said that if he was less of an asshole, he wouldn't have been taken down. Like, if the rest of they wouldn't have needed Omerta if he just wasn't a complete dickhead, but he was a dickhead, and so. This is like the exact opposite. This is a whole bunch of riders having a huge amount of respect for what Pogačar is currently doing. And if they're riding next to him, they're in a peloton with him, they're seeing him for, a heck of a lot closer than we are, and they are feeling this way about him. I think that's a pretty good indication that as fans, we can sit back and just enjoy what he's up to.
And it's the second instance of that same sort of situation, because the first jersey swap, and it was more of a kind of jersey donation than a jersey swap, to be clear. But the day after, Alaphilippe and Mirko Maestri were up the road together. And after Maestri then did the very sweet, heartfelt interview, presumably at the dinner table that evening, the following morning, Alaphilippe turned up with a personalised pizza box with his the jersey he'd worn on the previous stage and won the stage, having had Maestri's help the whole day. And Maestri, he'd said that of the two riders that he most respected as he was coming up through the ranks were Alaphilippe and Sagan. And so that was a hugely important day for him. And it's probably the same for Pellizzari. I mean, he's 20. This is his first Grand Tour, obviously. He's being courted by some big name teams. And, he's had a couple of great results in the past few months. He's second place at the Tour de l'Avenir last year. So he's the sort of rider who probably has been looking at Pogačar and what he can do. And so, the fact that he didn't win the stage today, actually, he was, he went to seek out Pogačar, presumably just to say, mate, thanks for riding with me for 5 seconds. Great to be in this race with you. And he probably, he'll be absolutely delighted, like that fan on the side of the road was, to get a jersey like that.
More jersey swaps in pro cycling.
Yeah. Although I would also, because when Pogačar first kind of came on the scene in those first two dominant tours, he was a villain, and then it was only when he lost that you then become the hero. So I'm kind of ready for it to cycle back round and him to have another villain era, Vingegaard to get a bit of a hero era. Like, things have to keep moving, right? We can't stay stagnant.
We haven't got this in the run sheet for today, but that just reminded me of last week's trailer for the new Unchained series. And do you remember last year, but partly because Pogačar wasn't in
villain.
the race, in the show, sorry, but he was the villain character. He was painted as the villain, and he hasn't been the villain for a long time. But yeah, I mean, when dominance is hard to palate sometimes.
I'm just hoggish for narrative. I'll admit it.
Well, I mean, and speaking of that trailer, I think somebody else is going to be the villain this year, based on.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All about Scandal, folks.
Yeah,
apparently. Yep. Although I don't think I watched the same tour, but anyway, we can get to that another time.
Well, we're trying to decide at the moment whether we're going to do. If folks will recall that we did sort of deep dive podcast episodes for each episode of Unchained last year. Trying to decide at the moment whether we're going to do that again. That was a big pull just ahead of a Tour de France, which is already a large and complicated summer for us. So
we'll see.
Maybe
we'll see.
A couple episodes on Unchained. We will see. Speaking of Jonas Vingegaard, the biggest news of the week, by far, is that Johnny, you spotted. Well, I don't know if you spotted. No. Somebody spotted. You wrote about.
Yeah.
Jonas Vingegaard's new tattoo, which is just right up our alley in terms of placeholders content. So first of all, explain.
So this was obviously spotted by the boys who are hoggish for news over at Wheeler Flitz, a new article every 3 minutes. So if you just keep refreshing the page, love it. They spotted a photo of Jonas Vingegaard, snapped because he's gone off to training camp in Mallorca, which would hint he's probably going to the Tour, because you don't bother going to a big old training camp if you're going to be sitting around all summer. So he took a photo with some fans at a cafe, and peculiarly, can't remember that word. Anyway.
Well, you just said it correctly. So.
Did I say it correctly?
That is the word.
Sorry. Anyway, too much rain in my brain. There was a mark on his left arm.
A
mark. And it was a butterfly in black ink. Well, it looked like ink. Is it a real tattoo? Is it like a stick-on, like transferable tattoo? Like, like children have sometimes. He's got a young daughter. Maybe they're playing around and he's kept it on. Maybe he's trying to hoodwink all of us. But it looked like quite a large butterfly tattoo on his left arm, which, if you're aware of Jonas Vingegaard, you wouldn't necessarily guess that A, he would get a tattoo. I wrote about this in the Spin Cycle newsletter on Monday. Or B, that the tattoo he would choose would be a lovely butterfly. It was quite odd. I'm still trying to get my head around it. Have you guys seen it? Do you guys like it?
I like the theory that it's a transferable, but I don't know. I feel like, I mean, we're in 2024. Tattoos are now, it's not just sailors and pirates.
It's true.
You get tattoos, sailors, pirates and convicts. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the point you make about his daughter is a good one. I think my theory is it's either for a family member or his daughter picked it out and it is a real tattoo. It's too well placed to be a transfer from a 3-year-old, however old she is.
I just, like, do whatever you want. It does look
quite new, though, if it is.
But then you should have it wrapped up, I would have thought. But, do what you want with your body. Get any tattoos you want. I'm not, like, maybe it's got a really, like, personal meaning to it. It's, someone in his life who's, something's happened. But it's still, and like, I can't wait to see it in person, to be honest. But it just took me by surprise. Of all the tattoos, I mean, there are some wild tattoos out there in the peloton, but this is right up there now.
There's some really bad tattoos out there.
Yeah,
there's some really atrocious. This one I find quite. It's just a butterfly. Like, how can you can't hate on butterflies?
I think it's quite Vingegaard as well. It's quite
on his arm,
it's quite tame almost. It's quite sweet.
I think it's an interesting place for it on sort of his upper arm there, right?
Yeah, but it's not his upper. It's not like his bicep. It's kind of elbow level.
Well,
yeah,
but on his outer arm.
It's better than his having it on his lower back, like he's just got back from spring break in Mexico or something. Like small victories and all that.
Yeah.
Well, I think we have some ideas for.
Yeah.
Well, we should say who's got some other tattoos before we talk about.
Oh, you want to just go through some in the peloton? What, to give context?
Yeah, I mean, we don't have to labour on it, but you just mentioned that there are lots of tattoos in the peloton. So before we make anything up, we should maybe mention some.
Primoz Roglic has the huge like Celtic cross on his forearm, like a dark mark in Harry Potter. Like he puts his wand on it and it summons all the other Visma Lease bike riders.
Something about Johnny's religious beliefs.
I like Philippe Gilbert is now retired, but he has very poorly done squiggly rainbow bands around his ankle.
Ooh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Philippe Gilbert.
Oh, Sagan obviously has the Joker tattoo.
Yeah.
That could be the worst.
Yep. Might be. It's actually a thing with Danes, or at least I've picked out a lot of Danes when I was doing some well, not research, it's hard to research which cyclists have tattoos, but just remembering who does. And it just so happened that Skelmo's posted something on Instagram today, and one of his recent pictures, he has a grizzly bear on his left pec.
Oh God!
Just the head. But then that reminded me that Norsgaard, his compatriot, has that massive tiger head.
Oh, is that Norsgaard? I couldn't remember if it was him or Jorgensen.
Yeah, I checked.
Okay.
Well, it's the reason you're confused is
They're both ginger.
Norsgaard's full Scandinavian name is Norsgaard Jorgensen. Jorgensen.
That makes a lot more sense.
So that's probably why you're confused.
Okay. God, that was really bugging me.
Those are two.
Anyway,
two other Danes with tats.
We do have some ideas for tattoos that specific riders should get. However, it feels like a Escape After Dark kind of thing. So I think that we'll save it. We'll come back to it in Escape After Dark. So if you're a member, you will get our thoughts on which tattoos which riders should get. If you're not a member, you're not going to get that. And I don't even know how you're going to live with yourself if you don't understand that, what tattoo Julian Alaphilippe should get.
Because we know.
So we know. We do know. Before we sort of wrap up what's going on right now, anything else from the Giro that has stuck out to either of you?
I mean, I would just, I don't know how interesting this is, but I have been kind of keeping a tally for a little while of how many breakaways there have been in the past several years. We're talking like 10 years. And I think we're on for a record low successful breakaways this Giro for the past decade anyway.
Interesting.
Which is interesting, particularly, and the reason it's interesting is that Pogačar is leading by so much, and usually the reason that there have been so many breakaway successes is that there's one guy way out in front, and the fact that that's not the case this year is just something that I'm chewing on at the moment. So there we go. That's the only thing that I have to bring to the table off the top.
The only other thing I think that's worth mentioning is the way that the start of today's Tuesday's stage unfolded. How the riders effectively forced the organisers to do what the riders wanted to do, which doesn't happen very often. The organisers still wanted the peloton to ride a neutralised, stage up and down the big climb at the start. Umbrella. Thank you. And the riders said just point blank no. They all voted unanimously with the CPA. And I think this is credit to the CPA and its president, Adam Hansen, that they've managed to corral some sort of organisation amongst the riders to be like, look, if you all don't want to ride up a 2,500 metre mountain in sub-zero temperatures with snow, then you don't have to. Collective bargaining, all come together. You make the race, and it was good to see because the Giro was very ready to make sure so that they didn't have to give a freebie to Livigno next year to make them set off in the snow, which isn't good.
I was going to say that the context there is important, which is that towns pay to be start or finish towns, and if they do not end up being a start or finish town, then they either have to give that money back, or the Giro has to come back some other time, or they have to figure out that deal again, right? And that's why the Giro does not want to shorten stages or alter stages if they don't have to. They have a monetary incentive to not change anything. I think this is one of the most impressive actions from the CPA that we've seen in recent times, and really, I wonder how much more of it we're going to see. It is, as you say, it's a credit to Adam Hansen and sort of like the coalition he's built among the riders. I think that their public communication could still maybe use a little bit of work, and Adams in particular. But like, because communicating with the fans is equally important in making sure that you keep the fans on side with the riders, right? But I think that in terms of the actual action, it was quite impressive today because like we've seen them race in worse conditions, be forced to race in worse conditions in recent years, and they just put their foot down and said no.
The only thing that would have been the cherry on top would have been if Tadej Pogačar had spoken publicly, like in terms of in support of the riders. But maybe that's not how he felt, and it was the rest of the team, because he said when he was asked in the interview before the start what he thought, and he was like, oh, if we have to race, we'll race. Where as the pink jersey, you have a bit of authority, but then he's caught in between the riders in the CPA and then also the Giro, who have paid him a lot of money to start at the race. So you can understand why he doesn't want to completely, piss on their cornflakes even more than the rest of the peloton have. But that would have just been the cherry on top, I think, in terms of rider power being exhibited.
Yeah. We did miss out on some spectacular photos, though, because it was probably snowing up there, and it would have looked kind of like, the 89 Andy Hampsten Stelvio year, which was just spectacular, but also like a bunch of riders got hypothermia on the way down. So less than ideal from an athlete safety perspective.
Chuck it in AI. AI can make it look like how it was going to.
Just look at the old pictures, Johnny.
The pictures from that I did a whole kind of
retrospective.
Yeah, that works. But I like chatted with Andy Hampsten about that day and did a whole thing for Velo News back in the day, and like he doesn't really remember it that fondly, even though it's sort of like one of the, I guess probably one of the iconic images of cycling at this point is Hampsten coming over the Stelvio on that day. And I think that there's some argument to like, this is a sport that happens outside and the clothing is better than it's ever been. And, realistically, you probably could ride in worse conditions than you have ever been able to ride in. But I also don't think that like making complicated decisions like that at the start of the stage, it's not really reasonable. So erring on the side of not doing the giant mountain pass in the snow.
And the descents that they did do looked proper slimy. So
yeah, it was still miserable. Yeah. It's not like it was a nice day out anyway. They just didn't hopefully get hypothermia. Anyway, that's it from that's it for Giro and tattoo chat, I think.
Yeah,
thus
that's
far
enough.
This episode. We'll be right back. We're going to talk doping in a minute. Welcome back, everybody. So yeah, we're gonna take the tone down a little bit, I think, and talk about something quite serious, which is it's a topic that we've touched on numerous times, and it essentially comes down to contamination and anti-doping, right? And sort of fundamentally the strict liability under which the entire anti-doping system exists. If you don't know what that means, it basically means that an athlete is responsible for anything that's in their body, kind of regardless of how it got there, right? And some, bans can be shortened and things like that if they find that it was an accidental contamination. Sometimes the ban even disappears completely, but fundamentally you are responsible for what is in your body, and it is essentially a guilty until proven innocent system. It is not a legal system, right? We're not talking about a country's legal system or going to jail or anything like that. But this was sort of highlighted again this week because Lizzie Banks, the now former professional cyclist, put up a very long and detailed explanation of essentially her last year. On July 28, 2023, she was informed of a adverse analytical finding for two substances. One was formoterol, which is something that she had a prescription for. It's an asthma medication. And the second was chlortalidone, which I'm not even sure I'm saying correctly, which is a diuretic. Diuretics are generally used as masking agents. That's why they're banned. Because basically the idea is to sort of flush stuff out of your system as quickly as possible. You're trying to hide. Masking is not really the right term for it. You're not like covering up another drug. You're just trying to flush the other drug out and make it so you won't test positive for something else. So that's why diuretics are banned. This particular diuretic is probably the dumbest diuretic you could possibly take. And Lizzie is very, very, very adamant in her statement that this was an accidental ingestion of some sort, an accidental contamination, and that she has no idea where it came from and has been trying to get to the bottom of this for now coming up on a year.
And what's groundbreaking about it is that she's actually been now, I can't remember the wording, but
it was UK anti-doping found about 5 days before her tribunal day was set that she bore no fault or negligence for those positives. So she spent the whole time trying to prove it and was sort of getting battered away. And then, lawyers aren't cheap. So she spent all this money, and then it's coming up to the tribunal where she's going to be able to, make her case and argue about it, her side of it. And then they're like, oh, no case. you're off. So you can understand why she wants to go through this explanation to completely lay out, her side of what happened. And I think huge credit has to go to the openness, because you see these false positive or contaminated or like claimed contaminated cases, and we can talk about benefit of the doubt, and it's I think it's definitely hard to get in terms of the minds of the public, but by posting a huge explanation of absolutely everything that you've gone to, your own research, it does give weight to an athlete getting the benefit of the doubt. By being so open. And I think that's a huge thing that's missing and has been missing for however many years from anti-doping. Why are we not let in to see and hear the explanations, after the fact, or just even like the amount of times that myself or colleagues have put in requests for comment or explanation and you don't even get a reply. So it's this huge sort of mysterious thing that just exists and that has some sort of unquestionable moral right to decide, when in Lizzie Banks' case it seems that she has been very unfairly treated and effectively all of those hours and effort that she's put into the sport are now gone.
It's not even dubious. The whole mystery isn't just around the easy question of are people doping. It's the way that we talk about it too, the way that we're allowed to talk about it and the terms in which we do. One of the quite sad things about the whole thing is that she prefaced everything that she said with, please remember that there's somebody behind this, somebody who's got to receive all of this, and the way that it's talked about, approach it with some sensitivity. And, I believe Lizzie Banks. I don't believe everyone who comes out with this sort of thing. So there's also that we've got, there's always got to be a seed of something going on. But yeah, there's this real kind of, okay, so we understand that there might be something going on, but we're not even allowed to talk about it.
It's an interesting one for sure. And she's made the point that the reason she's been so public with it, she gave a big interview at the same time as she released on her website, which is Lizzie Banks, that's Lizzie with a Y, lizziebanks.co.uk if you want to read the whole thing and you haven't seen it. She's a big interview in the Telegraph, a British newspaper, sort of explaining it and getting the publicity out there, because she doesn't want other people. She wants to try and affect change, right? And she doesn't want other athletes to have to go through what she's gone through, which, that's noble.
Yeah, I mean, the fundamental question is the system doing more harm than good at this point?
It's hard to say, because the thing is, there are people you still get positive tests, and there are athletes still doping out there, not just in cycling, across all sports. Lizzie made she put some numbers up there of how many riders she believes have had similar run-ins to her in recent years in terms of these sort of contaminated positives. But then there are a couple of quotes that stuck out to me where it's like, the majority of doping news that you see out there is cases like mine. I don't necessarily buy that. I think it's such a delicate balance, right? There are still riders out there who are going to cheat, and you need to be on them, because otherwise it quickly unfurls and then you don't have a sport, or like a sport in a real sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a catch-22, really.
I think that my primary issue with it is the system. Like, basically what happens in the year after you receive, notice of this adverse analytical finding, right? The fact that you have to go spend just an enormous amount of time and money, which some athletes have and some athletes don't, to then go try to clear your name. And I don't know what the solution is. It just doesn't feel like there's a reason why the rest of the legal system is set up at the exact opposite of that, right? That it doesn't feel particularly fair. And I think that's really the fundamental argument that Lizzie's making here, is that the way that it's set up at this point in time doesn't feel like the right way to set it up for the athlete. But again, I don't know what the solution is, because, we've seen the other side of that coin. We've seen the version where anti-doping is completely ineffectual or corrupt, even worse.
You can't leave somebody in the peloton on the EPO until they're proven guilty. Yeah,
exactly. Like, so what do you do there? And I don't have the answer. I think that, it's worth reading. It's worth reading the whole thing. Go check it out. We'll drop the link in the show notes, and go check it out and just let us know what you think. I'd actually be really interested to hear what folks out there think, either hit us on Discord or send me an email, editor@escapecollective.com, and yeah, let me know what you think, because this is a topic we've actually talked about doing, like a big series on what anti-doping looks like these days. We haven't done it yet because it's a very big project, and I'm not sure that the answers are out there, to be perfectly honest, but I'd be really interested to hear what folks out there have to say. And yeah, kudos to Lizzie for posting all of this, right? Like opening all of that up to the public, I think is a pretty key part in everybody else understanding what happens when these results come back. Because she is certainly not alone. She may be exaggerating in that most doping cases are these contaminated samples, but she's certainly not alone. Should we head to a funnier doping story?
Light relief.
It's funny in a sad way.
Funny
it's funny
in a way
in a, like a come on.
Cry.
It's also funny in a very predictable, well, not predictable, maybe it's unsurprising way. It's just, what, really?
Let me sum it up. There was a French amateur racer who is suspected of having motor doped, like mechanical doped, stuck a motor in his bicycle at a French amateur race, Route de l'Oise, on the 20th of May. And I guess others in the peloton thought this was maybe happening. I don't know if they could hear it or he's just like...
That's amazing.
Yeah. So like he hits the button and he just zooms away and they're like,
Power up time.
So they tell the race director, and the race director goes and confronts this guy, and he gets in his van and just starts driving away. And the race director is on the hood of the van.
Wow.
Yeah, good stuff. And he's driving, and then finally slows down enough that the race director like escapes. And then the dude just like
There's
drove away. There's
confusion currently of whether there was another man driving the van. So there could be two. There's either one motor doper and like
a motor
driver, or they're one and the same. But there's some reports as well that they've handed themselves into police on Tuesday morning, because the gendarmes, like they got reported to the police. French police love doing shit like this.
Oh yeah.
And so they were like, we're not getting manhunted by the gendarme. We're handing ourselves in.
Oh my god.
So it's
where did he finish in this bike race?
I think he finished 7th or 8th on the stage, and he was it was a stage race. So then the next day his team were like not allowed to start. It's all just, this happens all the time. It's just mad. Like,
it does.
Well, not all the time. Okay, more than you would
time.
think though. Like in amateur bike racing.
More than you would think.
Most of the doping stories are amateur, I reckon.
Well, at least motor doping ones.
He's also an actor or something. Like he played a role in a movie called The Bike of, how do you say it? Jelaine Lambert would be the
right. Okay.
So
I have not seen this film, but I recognized.
Sounds like you need to go see this film.
I recognized the name. I have heard of this. It's supposed to be like a comedy sports film, and it's got some decent French actors in it. And some, 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Wow.
But so not great, probably. Maybe I'll have to watch this.
The other thing to this story is that on the guy's Instagram, which I think is now locked, so you can't go and see it, there were loads of photos with him and Astana Kazakhstan boss Alexander Vinokurov, because I think the guy, the motor doping guy, owns a restaurant that sponsors Astana. So he's like a sponsor of Astana, and like obviously buddies with Vino because he's plying him with cash, so then can go out and rise them and get...
Got similar morals.
Well, Christ. Kate, you're swinging for the fences today. I love it.
Well, it's Vinokurov. It's an easy target.
Yeah, it's true. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's correct. That's what I've been seeing. I haven't... But yeah, just like, it keeps getting better.
Obviously, details are sketchy, but it does keep getting better and better.
Sounds like a movie in itself.
I find some amusement.
Yeah, you got to try
the dichotomy between these two stories, right? Like we've got a very quite serious Lizzie Banks story about I think some real problems in the anti-doping system, and then we've got this freaking jabroni putting a motor in his bicycle. And jabroni. Yeah, putting a motor in his bicycle and then
only
like
finishing 7th or 8th.
trying to win
At least win the
amateur race.
Come on. And don't have it people hear
Come on.
test it out beforehand
Right.
so that
Seriously.
the other dudes can't hear it as it powers you up the climb. Come on.
Brilliant.
All right. That's enough of that. Let's move on from French amateur motor doping. I want to talk about the 4 days of Sam Bennett, the 6 days of Dunkirk. Kit, what happened here?
Well, first of all, it's my favourite bicycle race name, the 4 Days of Dunkirk, which is still called that despite now being 6 days long. But it did end up being, rather poetically, the 4 days of Sam Bennett, who has started winning and he's won 4 times. And it's quite nice, really, that he didn't win the stage that he so nearly won, so that we could use this joke. He came second to an early celebrating Belgian from Soudal Quickstep, Vangeloof, I think his name is, whose stage win, despite his early celebration and almost loss, was apparently, according to Patrick Lefevre, as exciting as Julien Alaphilippe's Giro d'Italia stage win in extraordinary style. So take of that what you will. But anyway, back to Sam Bennett.
That was a bit of a unnecessary sort of kick in the teeth from Patrick Lefevre, but you know, it's great that Sam Bennett's back to winning ways. Nice guy in the bunch. He's been through some of it. I just wish we had, you know, maybe an Irish compatriot to also like revel in his resurgence.
Did someone say Ireland?
Oh,
Did someone say Sam Bennett?
whose are those dulcet tones?
Another Irish.
Is it your man?
It's your man, the Irish man.
Hello, Ronan.
Hello, folks.
Welcome back, Ronan.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome back.
I sensed there was a Sam Bennett discussion happening, and I popped on the old Google Meets, hit record on the Zoom here, and here we are.
As you do.
Who knows what's about to happen?
That was purely natural, entirely an accident that you ended up here. Yeah.
I feel very happy for Sam, but I feel happier knowing that someday there will be a trick pub quiz question asking how did Sam Bennett win on 4 different days of the 2024 4 Days of Dunkirk without winning on every day of the 4 Days of Dunkirk.
Do you go to many pub quizzes where there are questions about the 4 Days of Dunkirk?
I don't go to pub quizzes at all, so
Okay.
I can't answer how frequently 4 Days of Dunkirk comes up in pub quizzes. I imagine almost every week, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think surely, right? Yeah.
It's a very good question that I reckon will come up in a cycling club Christmas do or something. And
We should do a bike grid. We should do a bike grid about Sam Bennett's 4 Days of Dunkirk, where every answer is Sam Bennett. Maybe on the anniversary next year.
It was almost the 6 days of Sam Bennett because he was close on the first stage, and then
and even closer on the 4th stage.
I wondered were Patrick Lefevre's comments motivated by the fallout he had with Sam Bennett.
He said
because
not, but he could also be lying.
Has he ever been caught lying previously?
I don't think so.
Oh, no.
Not come to
okay.
not off the top of my
He's
head.
a bastion of credibility.
Has he ever said silly things previously?
He's quite a quiet man, Patrick Lefevre.
Yeah, never anything controversial.
Yeah.
I think we're thinking of a
very
different Patrick here.
Well, Ronan, while we have you here, could we do a little mailbag? Can we ask you about performance a little bit?
Yeah, if you must.
It's nap time for Johnny and I.
Don't play coy,
I thought it was
Ronan.
coming
You
on to
love
make a
this.
confession, but
A confession? This isn't church. Or what do you want to confess,
Well, let's hear the confession first.
my little AI experiment, which suggested I'm about to take the world record for the individual pursuit.
Oh, yeah. Okay,
Yeah,
tell us
go on.
about this.
I was just a little AI curious on a Monday morning when I probably should have been doing actual
Who
work.
amongst
but,
us?
I was researching performance related stuff, so I'm gonna chalk that up as time in the book there. And I started off with something like trying to just see if, because a calculator for the 4 kilometer individual pursuit doesn't exist, or at least the one that I find that does exist isn't all that useful. So I just asked ChatGPT, if I have this CDA and I have this power output, pursuit time am I likely to do? And it was pretty accurate, I think. And then I delved into our record, and then I started using it to try and teach me how to make these calculations myself. And then I built like a spreadsheet on Excel, and things got really out of hand. And then I realized that it started getting questions. It started giving me incorrect answers to questions that had previously given me correct answers, to the point where with a CDA of 0.175 and a power output of 475 watts, it told me I was going to do a 4K individual pursuit in 1 minute and 3 seconds, which, I mean, I know the individual pursuit isn't in the Olympics anymore, but I think if I could do that sort of time, it would be a case to bring it back.
Question: how far back do you think you've set the singularity by asking AI about CDA and track cycling and time trialing and all this stuff? Do you think you've given us an extra like couple months to enjoy our human bodies and minds?
I don't know what you mean.
Okay,
Well, I'll ask
ChatGPT then.
Outsmarted ChatGPT. So it's going to have to relearn how to be.
The reason I wanted to make this confession was just that it's a reminder that people are still superior.
A warning. Okay.
Well, I want to know why you were doing this.
What do you mean, isn't it? Because he's Ronan.
What? I'm just... okay, so like, why would you be asking yourself this question? And why would you be asking ChatGPT this question?
It kind of stems...
This feels like the
from
confession part of the confession is about to...
Oh, no, the individual pursuit question mostly stems from a conversation I had with a member at the Escape Collective Summit in Belgium, Joey, who had seen the power output that I had done for 4 or 5 minutes on... Must have been Eau de Quaremont, because Paterberg isn't 4 or 5 minutes long, is it? So, yeah, it must have been Eau de Quaremont, and then had suggested that I should do an individual pursuit. And that question had lingered long enough to the point where I had gone on to ChatGPT to try and find out what kind of time I would do.
Nice.
Do we have any mailbag questions for Ronan? We need Giro.
I think there are a couple in there.
Performance mailbag questions. All right, mailbag question number 1, Ronan. How did Julian Alaphilippe win a Giro stage without any marginal gains? And I believe that this question stems from the fact that he was wearing a standard jersey and shorts, like no skin suit. I don't know if he missed out on any other marginal gains on that particular day, but I think basically this question is asking you to explain yourself.
I think whoever asked that question has a hefty dose of confirmation bias going on there, and that they don't want marginal gains to be real, and so they take one example like this where seemingly he hadn't harnessed the power of marginal or maximal gains and won anyway. I think the answer is obvious in that he had a commanding lead that day where the skin suit wasn't the difference, but had that come down to a 2-up sprint with one other Alaphilippe shaped rider equally as strong, he might have had another second place to his name rather than a stage 1.
Do you think he was utilising the maximal gain of wanting to prove Patrick Lefevre wrong and make him eat a big portion of humble pie?
I think there are times where, yeah, the mind can overcome the gains. But I do think, he had aero wheels, he had an aero helmet, he had a tarmac SL8, he had all the other... it wasn't as if he was riding around in a round framed... Well, it kind of is a round tube frame, but anyway, he didn't have 32 spoke wheels.
It's a very fancy round tube frame, though. Very fancy.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
Ronan, how do you feel about his decision making a couple of days later when he did the time trial with the road helmet?
I can't really say too much because that I'm presuming he was using an Evade, which is... I've used that road helmet.
No, he wasn't. It was the vented climbing version. Pretty sure.
Can I divert back to what I said yesterday?
He just doesn't care.
I mean, yeah, there's a long history of riders who are not going for time trials doing the time trials, and the thing that always surprises me is that they actually use time trial bikes. It's like, why not just ride it in your road bike? Or I mean, yeah, the time limit is a real thing, obviously, but yeah.
Yeah, they still have to make time. I remember trying to do the math one time on whether I could actually make time cut with like full aero kit, and it would actually be quite close. It'd be very, very close. So I could see why they would just want to go easy and be as aero as possible. To ask a slightly more serious question. Have there been any marginal gains? Have there been any optimization or interesting performance things that have come out of this Giro that have stuck out to you, either at the time trials or elsewhere? I mean, we talked a fair amount on that bonus performance process episode about like the use of a classified, that essentially the internal hub by Ineos during that first time trial. Is there anything else that stuck out to you?
I mean, that is the obvious one. There were some new helmets. There's a couple of things, but that classified one is really the big takeaway from this Giro. I think there's a couple of. This is one of the things I struggle with in writing stuff like this, is that you kind of, there's so much to say about something like that inevitably you end up, either for the purposes of brevity or whatever, you can't touch on everything. But I think there has been a bit of a misconception in that adding a bigger chainring to your bike makes it more aerodynamic, which is the opposite. Just adding a bigger chainring probably actually makes the bike slightly less aerodynamic, but it's all the other gains that come with it. You can't point to one element of that decision that actually makes it faster for Ganna or Thomas or whoever the Ineos Grenadiers rider in question is. But to go back to the aero thing again, if everything else is equal, a 1x setup should be more aero than a 2x setup, but you don't get 2x 66 tooth big chainring options.
Shimano doesn't make one of those?
No, I think the shifting, probably less than ideal. But I mean, we're in danger of getting into this rabbit hole again, but the point I wanted to make about that was just that there's so much more going on there than just either improved drivetrain efficiency or all the different elements that go into improving that drivetrain efficiency, because even there's multiple aspects to that, or the aero claims, or the fact that having a 66 tooth with a classified actually gives a bigger delta in terms of effective front chainring sizes versus that you could possibly achieve with an actual 2x setup and a front derailleur, because you're limited down to like 14 tooth difference in chainring sizes or something. So at the risk of nerding Johnny to death, I should probably leave.
He's falling asleep in the park. If you want more of that, if you're interested in what Ineos was doing in the time trials, if you're interested in what the World Tour riders are doing to go as fast as possible, if you're interested in how you can take that information and make yourself a slightly better cyclist, you should, one, become a member, because if you're a member, you get access to the Performance Process podcast, which is a members-only podcast that Ronan makes every other week. Plus, Ronan, we just launched the Performance Process newsletter. That, of course, is going to be in front of the paywall.
Could I just add that while I admit that I'm not the most fervent listener of the Performance Process podcast, because I might as well listen to it in Swahili or Mandarin to understand what's going on, the Performance Process newsletter, some parts of it are way more easily digestible. And if you're even more like just a casual racing fan, more of a casual racing fan and not all into the tech, there's lots of nuggets in there that I found interesting and useful, and it's entertaining.
Not only will it be in front of the paywall, Caley, but you can get delivered straight to your inbox. And it's important to point out that it is not like a transcript of that week's podcast. It is, and there will be, like last week, it had sort of news hits in terms of Reserve had a new wheel set and Watchshop had new extension options, and little quick hits like that. That's unfortunately I just don't have time to cover all those things in greater detail on the site. You'd almost need to be writing 2 or 3 articles a day to cover all the tech news. But a newsletter means you can. Here are the interesting things I've seen in the past 10 days or 2 weeks, and then it also has like a mini review. Last week I reviewed 2 different types of new energy gels that both offer 50 grams of carbohydrates. And then there was a bit on the impeding tire war that I'm doing my best to drum up even more. I've spoke to a couple of tire brands since, and I'm determined to have them at each other's throats as much as possible for the benefit of our own riding pleasure and grip and speed and all sorts.
I like the gel reviews, because I imagined in my head that when you sat down for dinner you would have like a different gel while your infant children were having their own like version of mush, and that pleased me. That was one of the tests. Was I give a gel, 2 different gels, one to each kid, and see which one it took longer to fall asleep. That's genius.
They're both still awake.
Perfect.
All right. Make sure you're a member. Head to escapecollective.com/member. That's how you can sign up. And the best way to sign up for that newsletter is actually, as of today, on our homepage. If you just scroll down a little bit, you scroll down, I think it's below the text sections. It's like 2/3 of the way down the homepage. There's a bar where you can put your email in and sign up for any of our newsletters. So you can sign up. Let me see which order they're in.
It's a low bar
You can
to
sign up
pass.
for Spin Cycle or Threaded or Wheel Talk or Performance Process. And you can just drop your email in and hit the little arrow and voila, you are signed up for the newsletter. Ronan, do you want to stick around for the rest of the podcast?
Are you going to be here?
Do you have places to be? I am here. I am the host of the podcast.
Okay, I'll stay then.
Okay. All right. Trick or treat. Our last segment of the day before we get into Escape After Dark, we're gonna do a quick round of trick or treat. Johnny, remind everybody what trick or treat is.
Trick or treat, it's just a bit of usually light relief from sort of serious racing talk or even cycling talk. You get to choose either day. You pretend it's Halloween. You can arrive with either a treat, something good that's happened in your week, cycling related or not, or a trick, something bad that's happened in your week, cycling related or not. And it's up to each of us to pick and present to the class. It's like show and tell, basically. Just something to switch up the pace of the podcast, something a bit different. Just get the conversation going in Discord, that sort of thing.
I mentioned my booties last time. And
They
we
went
should have
down
put
well.
An affiliate link. They went down well. We should put an affiliate link on that because I think we sold some of them. I know Jared bought some.
More than one. Yeah, we should have. How much would you have got for that? $4?
At least one. Oh, not even.
Oh.
No. Like,
Okay, maybe it's not worth it then. For our otherwise impeachable integrity.
Well, who has a trick or a treat for us?
I have a treat.
Oh
yeah.
So last week I mentioned my local cycling club, and I guess this is probably a testament to how great a club it is. But I've had a handful of messages from club riders, including a chap who designed one of the earlier iterations of the Ronda Cycling Club jersey, which is my local club. And he also gave me the brilliant tidbit of information that is when he joined the club, I don't know actually how long ago it was, but he's not very old, so not very long ago. There were 30 to 40 members, and now there are over 300. So it's a huge club and a very passionate one. So basically, I mean, we wanted to introduce a bit of, I guess, audience participation. Not quite the right word, but we want to hear from other cycling clubs. And I mentioned the kit for Ronda and how much I like it. It's very simple.
Kits.
So yeah, if you want to, we want to hear from avid cycling clubs, especially if you've got good kit.
Yeah, send your kits in and maybe a bit about your club, and we'll rate your kits, but in like a nice way. We're not gonna, you know. I mean, who am I?
It'll be varying.
Yeah, who am I?
Varying degrees of excellent is really what we will.
Yeah, just
rate
fun
the kits
ones.
as.
Like the weirder the better. Show them. We'll post them in Discord and stuff, just to enjoy it. You know, a bit more, but something a bit more real than all the
about
racing.
your club too.
Yeah, any fun
Whatever
stories,
that might be.
anecdotes, just to shine a bit on our, on everyone, all of us, all the community.
Our collective.
Send them on Discord or email editor@escapecollective.com, and I'll pass them on. Also, mailbag questions. We forgot to actually mention that after we chat with Ronan there. We want your mailbag questions. So, yeah, they could be questions for Ronan. They could be questions for us. You could kind of direct them however you want, but we want to start doing some mailbags on this podcast and just answer your questions. Yeah, it could be racing stuff or tech stuff or whatever, and we will make sure that we bring in the correct journalist to answer your question.
Send your questions to RTE Donnybrook Dublin 4 PO Box 5. how do you
should
send
do
your
it like
questions?
you write your question on the back of a $20 bill and you send it to me.
20. I was going to say 5.
No, same as always. Drop them into Discord. Make sure you tag us so we see that, or send them to editor@escapecollective.com. We should just make an email that's like placeholders.
Yeah, we should.
We haven't done that yet.
No.
I'll do that at some point.
Have you got a
Anyway,
trick or
send it
treat,
to me.
Caley? It's fine if you don't. It's not compulsory.
I don't think I do.
Ronan,
Johnny,
has
has your
about
brolly
this?
actually got a hole in it? Because even your microphone is getting wet now.
Yeah. Well, this isn't even the trick of my week. I'm sad to say. The fact that I'm recording outside. No, last Wednesday evening, after you'd have had this podcast, I was coming back from, I was playing 7-a-side football against a Ukrainian team who all seemed very old and tall, and they were all 6'4", and turned out they were 17 years old, and they battered us 3-1. But that wasn't the bad bit. The bad bit is I checked my phone, and everyone's familiar with the Hovel. This is Hovel Diaries part 7054. There were like 50 messages in there, most of them videos and photos of fire engines outside of my place because one of the washing machines in the basement had set on fire. Ironic, considering that is the entire premise of my newsletter. But yeah, so it was just like, as I was on the bus home, I was returning back like, will there still be a property standing where there used to be one? So that everything was fine in the end. The property wasn't burned down. Washing machines have been replaced. Today there's heavy rain. There was a burst pipe in the road, so now the road's flooded. Bear in mind, this is an area of London where, my property aside, these properties go for millions upon millions of Great British pounds. So if I was one of those people, I would be thoroughly cheesed off with all the hijinks.
Thoroughly cheesed off.
And then, now I'm in a park getting slightly damp. But you know what? My life's great. I have no complaints. It's just good material. And I think it keeps us honest.
That's a good trick.
Yeah, I kind of have to share these stories with people to get them off my chest.
As you said earlier.
Yeah.
You're not going to laugh, you're going to cry.
Yeah.
Ronan, do you have a trick or treat?
I mean, the treat for me was that I could do a 4-kilometer individual pursuit in just over a minute, but that turned out to be a trick also. So
Perfect.
I think I've shared mine already. Probably should have saved it for this section.
That's good.
All right. I think that's about it for us today. We are going to head into Escape After Dark and talk about the tattoos of the fake tattoos, the tattoos we imagined for the Pro Peloton. So stick around for that if you're a member. Otherwise, we'll see you next week.
And if you're not a member, sign up. Come on. You're missing out on good stuff.
What are you doing?
I'm not talking about our stuff. I'm talking about Ronan's stuff. He's a journalist. He reports things, finds information out. Join the club.
Fake.
Come on.
Fake news.
Well, don't say that. I've just tried to big it up.
You can't big me up like that. It puts me under too much pressure, and then so I have to say something silly in response, and then you lose the whole. we lose what we're trying to achieve.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
You should sign up. escapecollective.com/member. Sign up now. We'll see you next week. Bye.